and a warm welcome to Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. Enterprises are undergoing rapid digital transformation. And in this digital transformation, we have seen how enterprises have evolved from the adoption of cloud to various other technologies, and now we have emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. And at the heart of all this is data. There are growing compliances which are trying to match the complexity of the technologies. So let's understand and deep dive how this landscape of enterprises are changing. What are the best of strategies that is to be adopted for the enterprises to ensure that kind of business growth and business continuity, considering all the cybersecurity aspect and the growing landscape. And to discuss all this in detail, we have a very special guest with us who is Bjorn Engelhardt. He leads the Asia Pacific region for Forcepoint. A warm welcome, Bjorn.
Pratik, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity, and really glad I can share some things with you and the viewers.
I would say the pleasure is all ours. So Bjorn, cybersecurity landscape in itself has evolved rapidly, if we say in the last 5 to 6 years. And it's still evolving. It's getting more complex with the kind of emerging technologies which are getting adopted by the Indian or say the global enterprises, I would say, which includes your artificial intelligence. There's quantum computing at the purview of all. So considering all this, how do you see that enterprises need to recalibrate their security priorities? What should be in the consideration?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. It's a broad question, and I think we could spend a lot of time talking about it. I think cybersecurity to me kind of mirrors innovation that's happening there. And I've been involved in cyber for a good 20 odd years, and it has been a progression of different types of risks and different types of challenges. The risks, get created. The organizations try to mitigate those risks. And what I've seen in the last few years, probably in the last 5 years or so, is a focus away from protecting infrastructure and physical things to understanding the data that's in an organization and protecting it. And I think we're probably still early in that phase. I think in the last couple of years, AI has come more to the forefront, and we're probably only at the beginning of that acceleration of that curve around there. And I think where we're seeing organizations, really focusing around is what is their data and how is that being used and who's using it, and then how are they going to secure it? You're right. It is a huge challenge to really get your head around all of the data. In the old days, it was kind of simple. You use the castle and the moat type of analogy, that you block the perimeter, you protect what's inside the castle. But that paradigm has changed, that today most organizations are dealing with data that's outside the castle. It's in different locations. It looks different from what it used to look before. And as you mentioned, AI is absolutely fascinating, but it creates a new kind of complexity, that data goes in and data comes out very differently. It can be condensed, it can be recreated, it can look different from what we would say. We put it in as a set of spreadsheets and documents, but it comes out as a summary that's even more powerful than the content that you put in there. And so that creates new challenges for companies. How do they have to prioritize their resources? Because nobody has an infinite budget. Nobody has infinite resources to manage it. And so we're seeing people moving away from traditional cyber, which is blocking and stopping activities. I guess in the space of data protection, it used to be traditional legacy DLP solutions like, if I see this, take this action. If I see that, deny that or delete it. To now going back to the beginning and saying, I really need to understand what I have in the organization. What is ephemeral or, I guess trivial data? What is sensitive, critical data? Where is it? Who's using it? What machine is it on? What application is it in? And as you can get the picture now, you're working with multi-dimensional challenges, right? And so how do you bring all of those dimensions together and say, what is it I'm really trying to protect? Because it's the crown jewels, it's customer data, it's data that's governed by regulations. Here in India, it's DPDP. If it's in Europe, it could be GDP, for example. If it's in Australia, it's different regulations. If it's Singapore, it's PDPA, etc. And so there's a series of outside regulatory pressures coming on organizations. There's a series of internal pressures on making sure that your customers can trust you to do business with it. So there really is a new set of objectives for organizations, and it used to be sitting as, it's a cyber issue, we have to deal with it. The other thing we've seen is a reprioritization that it's a business issue, new roles being created, chief digital officer, chief data officer, etc. And so it's become a challenging world, but I also think it's become important. What we're achieving now is that we're working through what is more important for the organization, what's truly at risk, and focusing our resources, focusing our efforts around those areas, rather than saying, I'm just trying to keep every bad person out there. So a lot of changes, a lot of shifts, but I see that particularly that AI is going to, in a way, force both organizations and governments to put more emphasis on it. But that's only going to lead to good, I think. It's going to lead to better outcomes.
And we have also observed a very critical aspect that now enterprises are more concerned about data residency, data sovereignty. And with the inclusion of AI, there are a lot many regulations and compliances which are getting introduced. If you talk about India, we have our own DPDP Act now. I've understood that, across APAC region, every country has their own data-related act. Then on the top of it, we also have an EU AI Act. So there's so many regulations that are getting introduced for enterprises. How do you see the impact of this and the kind of balance enterprises need to maintain with innovation versus compliance?
It's a very good question. Is that sort of dichotomy between allowing unfettered innovation or untethered innovation versus too much regulation? And I see most governments struggle with it, because if you stop innovation, you stop productivity and you stop development. And particularly in a country like India, if you look over the digital transformational revolution over the last maybe 10, 15, even 20 years, India was a follower. India was, part of that group. And now India's leading a lot of digital transformation and digital revolution as well. For example, some of the stats we've seen is that 98% of professionals in India use Gen AI for work. That's top of the world by a long way. The spending on AI in India is twice of what is on other technology. Again, that's top of the world. So India was participating and now is leading a lot of those changes. And you see, for example, the DPDP, the legislation proposed to become, I think, end of this year. There was nearly 7,000 submissions from industry, from governments, from individuals around what is it we need to achieve. And so you look at it from that perspective, you can think, wow, nearly 7,000 different inputs or points of view that need to be taken into control. You get a sense of how complicated this is. But there has to be a level of control from a government. I think there is, but can it keep up quickly and keep up fast enough with the rate of adoption and release of new technologies? It's a difficult one to answer. And I feel, a country like India is very progressive in that regard. If I look around the other regions, there is always questions around sovereignty coming up. And it's a very valid point. If I go back to a previous analogy of my castle and all my goods and my gold coins and wealth was kept inside that, it's very easy to understand. Now we're moving a lot of that data to different locations. It could be in the US, it could be in the UK, it could be in Australia, it could be anywhere when you're using SaaS applications. And so governments are looking at sovereignty for two reasons. One is, can I maintain business continuity? You can imagine that if the data is sitting in a foreign country, and that foreign country ends up in a hostile situation, the first thing, they just cut connections and you don't have access to it. And so critical infrastructure, government systems, major banking systems, finance, utilities, education, etc., will be impacted by it. The second one around sovereignty is just what's important to a country like India. Other countries have requirements. They may not cut off access, but they have mandatory release of data and share of data as well. And there are things that many countries believe are sensitive and important, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's just commercial sensitive, etc. And so there is a lot of focus. And, we were talking to some of the carriers here in India recently about creating a sovereign India cloud. I see countries like Singapore have done it, Australia have done it. Because there's a need and a growing pressure around that. And it's interesting how we've kind of come full circle that the data can be anywhere, cloud can be anywhere, to now coming back and understanding that particularly the data that's important. And if I refer back to our conversation, before we used to say store anything anywhere. Now, well, we can store redundant, trivial data wherever, and non-critical data, but the critical data that keeps India or any other country ticking needs to be stored in a local sovereign place, or at least a minimum a copy. And a few months back, we had a debate with a set of senior executives here in India around what does DPDP really mean? Can I use overseas cloud services? Can I use local cloud services? Must I use local? And there's still confusion around it. And so if some of the most senior executives are struggling, you can understand how the broader industry and society is questioning around that. And that's where I think some clarity in legislation becomes super important. Not overly prescriptive, but some clarity as well. So, time will tell. And I think from what I've seen, many countries are iterating very quickly on their data protection legislation. And I think particularly on the back of AI, as we made a transformation from generative AI to agentic AI, where agents or robots are essentially creating and sharing data by themselves. So fascinating times ahead.
Great. And I think enterprises are having their own maturity journey, considering all these disruptive forces around them, whether be it the technology, be it the compliance and regulations, because they are also getting framed to sync up with these emerging technologies. Now, considering all these factors beyond the disruptive forces which are working for the enterprises and the ones which are against the enterprises, how do you see the key trends in the next 3 to 5 years, be it in terms of the maturity gap bridging up for the enterprises, or the overall landscape of emerging technologies in sync with cybersecurity?
Wow. 3 to 5 years. I'll try to look 18 months sometimes ahead, because I think if we went back 2 years, one of my colleagues has a saying, let me go way back into 2024 and look at what we were dealing with. And we were dealing with Gen AI at that point in time. We really weren't looking at agentic AI as a short-term problem. But today, for example, AI just keeps on evolving at a pace that I don't think any of us can really predict or understand as well. And so, one thing I'd say is harness the innovation to your benefit. And look, in our case at Forcepoint, for example, we're absolutely using AI to speed up and create more accurate, increased efficacy around understanding what data an organization has, what it really means, executing on policies to stop it based on behavioral analytics, as opposed to just being very prescriptive or deterministic, saying if it equals that, then let's do this type of behavior. And so using some of these new technologies, becomes super important. You talked about quantum computing. I think that creates its own set of challenges, the ability to break into encryption, which is another great challenge, I think, is that we used to look at encryption as, oh, well, this is encrypted, I'm quite safe, my data is encrypted. And people would encrypt just anything and everything because they said, oh, well, I can encrypt it here and decrypt it over in this, the other side. But now, if you're thinking about, well, do I apply higher levels of encryption, for example, to more sensitive data? And the answer may be yes, you should do that, because there are techniques that could maybe break traditional encryption, but you can only do that if you understand what you've got, right? So it goes back to using the current innovations like AI to instantly or rapidly understand what you've got, take a decision real time. Hey, this is sensitive. I'm going to encrypt it, 256, 1024-bit, etc. encryption, and then I'm going to transmit it. Or, hey, I'm not even going to encrypt it. I'm not even going to allow this to leave. And so I always feel it's important to not fight the forces of innovation, but to leverage them. You do walk a tight, fine line between the two, but, whether it was an old Bruce Lee movie or something where you use the power of the opposition or use the power of the innovation to really advance your organization.
Yeah, okay, great. And I think you have pretty much summed up the kind of journey that enterprises need to look forward. And with that, we clearly understand that change is inevitable. Technologies are changing, your geopolitical scenarios are changing. What your organization think or plan of today and what they strategize for next 18 months, I will not say 3 to 5 now, next 18 months. So all these aspects are changing. It's a fragile world. As an enterprise, as the decision makers, the only way forward is to assess all these aspects, consider all the disruptive factors in and around, and look forward for some tech solutions that really understand and help you take care of all these concerns and challenges that really help your enterprise, your business to grow as smoothly as possible, taking care of these challenges, because challenges will definitely be there. It's the solution that you need to really look forward, collaborate with the technology providers to take care and provide a solution for it. Thank you, Bjorn, for your wonderful perspective and insights during this conversation. It was definitely a pleasure talking to you.
Pratik, my pleasure, and thank you again.
Thank you to all the audience who have been tuning to this conversation. I hope so you had got really insightful perspectives about the world, the way forward, and how to strategize around it. Thank you for tuning in, and be there. Look forward for this space for more such insightful conversation with the leading experts from the technology industry. Till then, take care, be safe, and be prepared for the inevitable to happen.